In Argentina, more than 34 million citizens go to the polls to elect 151 new legislators in an essential election for the country. We have more details in this news brief. Venezuela's army foiled a terrorist attack intended to affect and prevent the regional elections of November 21st. And the COP26 ends with Glasglow Pact agreed after last-minute negotiations. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. On Sunday in Argentina, more than 34 million citizens go to the polls to elect 151 new legislators in an essential election for the country, which is one to the road to recovery after being severely punished by the pandemic. Following an intense campaign and 2 very complex months, especially after the primaries in which the ruling party suffered a hard setback, voters will decide today how both houses of Congress will look like when the renewal of half of the deputies and 1/3 of the Senate will take place. With a large deployment of more than 90,000 troops, the country will control general and the health security, mainly in the province of Buenos Aires, which has the largest number of voters. For the administration of President Alberto Fernandez, this could be a defining election, since the majority of the tasks so far in the upper house is at stake. More than 400,000 Argentines have been voting abroad for hours now. And now let's review the context in which Argentines arrived to these paramount elections.
These elections are crucial for the stability of the ruling party's governance for the next 2 years. After losing the majority in 18 out of 24 districts in September's primaries, including the autonomous cities of Buenos Aires, President Alberto Fernandez's coalition Front for All must strive to win the general legislative elections of November 14. The path to the elections has been marked by 3 main issues: the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the country's economic situation inherited from a previous administration, and the debts with the International Monetary Fund. During the Fernandez administration, the Argentinian economy encountered the aftermaths of a pandemic, which caused it to drop by 9.9% in 2020, completing 3 years of recession. Despite this, Fernandez administration has managed to halt COVID-19 contagions and fully vaccinate over 60% of the population. In regards to the IMF debt, President Fernandez had this to say as the electoral campaign period came to a close.
Now we have to resolve the debt that they have left us with the International Monetary Fund. Of course, we have to resolve it. But I tell you, I am not going to solve it in 5 minutes, because whoever solved this problem in 5 minutes has given the fund the reason for everything they are asking for. And I give the reason to you, not to the fund. So I will take as much time as I need to find the best agreement for the Argentine people.
Following the results of the primaries in September, several government figures presented their resignations. The Minister of Interior, Minister of Science and Technology, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Territorial Development and Habitat, the Minister of Culture, all presented their resignation, sparking then a situation of political crisis in Buenos Aires. The entire cabinet of ministers offered their resignation to Governor Axel Kicillof, the Executive Director of the National Social Security Administration, and the Executive Director of the state's comprehensive medical care program for retirees and pensioners also offered their resignation. Argentinian social movements led by Movimiento Evita expressed their support to President Alberto Fernandez amid the internal crisis that broke out among the different sectors that make up the government coalition. They mobilized under the slogans Fuerza Alberto and for the unity of the Front for All. Over 101,000 polling stations are open for Argentinians to vote. The nation's foreign ministry said more than 385,000 Argentinian citizens abroad can exercise their right to vote in these elections. Polls open at 8 a.m. local time and will close at 6 p.m. local time. However, if any voter is inside a voting center or outside in line after the closing hour, he or she will be able to vote. Results are expected to be very close in these elections. The opposition, Together for Change Alliance, seeks to control the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate in the second half of President Alberto Fernandez's term of office.
Así que me tomaré el tiempo que haga falta para encontrar el mejor acuerdo para los argentinos y las argentinas.
Now we move on to other topics. This Saturday, Ecuador's prosecutor's office raised to 68 the number of dead in a new riot in a prison in the Ecuadorian part of Guayaquil. This Saturday, in a press conference, the governor of Guayas, Pablo Arosemena, stated that the conflicts took place in Pavilion 2 of the old penitentiary of the littoral of Guayaquil, located in the southwest of Ecuador, where there are an average of 700 people imprisoned. On the other hand, the general commander of the police, Tanya Varela, said that the confrontation broke out because the gangs are disputing the leadership in the pavilion after a leader of that prison sector was released. She also informed that actions have already been coordinated with the special units of the National Police, and security protocols have been activated inside the penitentiary center to provide immediate attention.
At this moment, from the information we have, 58 inmates have died and 12 inmates are injured and receiving medical support.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Venezuela, Interior Minister Remigio Ceballos announced at a press conference the capture of a terrorist group that was planning an attack to prevent the regional elections of November 21st. The head of the Interior Ministry pointed out that the capture took place this Friday, and those arrested are implicated in previous terrorist actions planned from Colombia to destabilize the country. Supported by graphic evidence, Ceballos explained the new attack aimed at setting fire to the warehouse complex of the National Electoral Council, located on the outskirts of the capital Caracas, and destroy the materials and equipment necessary for the development of the electoral process.
It's the same group that tried in 2020 to disrupt the elections to the National Assembly, specifically against national authorities and against the state's strategic infrastructure of telecommunications, electricity, the oil industry, intended to boycott the performance of the National Assembly. And there is a person in common who served as administrator and financer, William Ricardo Sanchez Ramos, also known as Antorcha.
Now we move on to other topics. The Polish police reported that the body of a young Syrian man has been found in the woods near the border with Belarus, the latest victim in a political standoff at the European Union's eastern border. Authorities said the body was found near the village of Wolka Tereshkova. The exact cause of the death was not be determined, although it was confirmed the young man was in his 20s. The recent fatality raised the human toll to at least 9 reported victims, as people arriving in Belarus are stranded next to the Polish border, facing freezing temperatures. Many of the asylum seekers are refugees from Syria, Iraq, or elsewhere in the Middle East, seeking to flee conflict and the hopelessness for the prospect of a better life in Europe. Russian President Vladimir Putin denied the claims about Moscow helping to orchestrate a crisis that has left hundreds of people from the Middle East trapped on the Belarus-Poland border.
We must not forget where this migrant crisis originated. Is Belarus the first one to encounter these problems, or what? No, these issues have been created by the Western countries themselves, including the European countries.
And Bulgaria goes to the polls on November 14th to elect a new parliament amidst a virus surge. The vote comes after no party secured enough support in the previous two elections, in April and July, to form a stable government. Their task this time will be not only to break the political deadlock that has badly hurt the economy of the European Union's poorest country, but also to elect a new president. More than 6.7 million Bulgarians are eligible to vote, but pollsters expect many of them to stay home because of growing concern over a new deadly COVID-19 wave with soaring infections and deaths.
Was very good. All materials have already been provided to us. We are trained to handle the machine. We have been informed that we will additionally count the receipts from the machine. Everything is fine. We act according to the rules with the control bodies. I think there will be no problem with the vote. It will be honest and 100 real. The organization was very good.
Now we address other topics. The COP26 summit ends with Glasglow Pact, agreed after last-minute negotiations. The COP26 climate talks have agreed to get countries to strengthen their emissions, cutting targets for 2030 by the end of the next year in a bid to limit dangerous warming. The Glasgow Pact was watered down at the last minute following a push by India and China, prompting angry responses from European and vulnerable countries. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told young people, indigenous communities and women leaders, all those leading the Climate Action Army, that he knew many of them were disappointed, and also said that the approved texts from COP26 were a compromise that took important steps, but the collective political will was not enough to overcome some deep contradictions.
I think today we can say with credibility that we have kept 1.5 degrees within reach, but its pulse is weak. And it will only survive if we keep our promises, if we translate commitments into rapid action, and if we deliver on the expectations set out in this Glasgow Climate Pact to increase ambition to 2030 and beyond.
United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres said the world was still on the precipice of the catastrophe after nations reached a global climate deal Saturday that fell short of what science said is needed to contain dangerous warming.
Approved texts are a compromise. They reflect the interests, the conditions, the contradictions, and the state of political will in the world today. They take important steps, but unfortunately, the collective political will was not enough to overcome some deep contradictions. As I said at the opening, we must accelerate action to keep the 1.5 degree goal alive. Our fragile planet is hanging by a thread. We are still knocking on the door of climate catastrophe. It's time to go into emergency mode, or our chance of reaching net zero will itself be zero.
In Spain, the Cumbre Vieja volcano on La Palma has left its first fatality on the island. It is about a man on his 70s, owner of a home affected by the accumulation of ash in El Paso. He was participating as a volunteer in the cleaning work of roofs when the roof of one of the buildings has collapsed. This person had the authorization pertinent of the Cabildo and the emergency teams to carry out these tasks. And according to local sources, he was in the process of removing ash from his own home when the accident happened. Despite the danger of acting in an area like this, the authorities have repeatedly stressed the importance of the work carried out by these crews, since the ash that accumulates on the roofs puts an extra weight on the structure that can severely damage houses and other buildings. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. In Afghanistan, at least one dead and 2 wounded reported after a new car bomb attack in Kabul. According to Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid, the explosion was caused by the burning of a vehicle in the police district 13 of the Afghan capital. He also said that the wounded have already been hospitalized to receive the necessary medical attention. He also informed that the security forces are deployed in the area after the beginning of an investigation to clarify the incident. The deep crisis that Afghanistan has been experiencing for decades worsened last August after the withdrawal of the U.S. troops and the seizure of power by the Taliban movement. Sudanese protesters took part in an anti-coup rally on Saturday, 2 days after the military formed a ruling council that excludes the country's main civilian bloc. The pro-democracy protest came nearly 3 weeks after top General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan ousted the government, detained the civilian leadership and declared a state of emergency. During these anti-coup mobilizations, security forces shot dead at least one protester. Other demonstrators in Khartoum's Twin City were wounded by live rounds. The military's October 25th takeover drew widespread international condemnation, as did a deadly crackdown on street demonstrations by people demanding it restore the country's democratic transition. Any hopes that the military will back down were dashed on Thursday when Burhan named himself as the head of the new ruling sovereign council that excludes the country's main civilian bloc.
The military's job is not to be in power or in politics, but to protect the constitution, which top General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan turned against after he took an oath to respect it.
Our demand is to bring down the military council and to bring back the civilian government. We are tired of the military rule, and we hope that not a single soldier will rule us.
A dispute over fish exports is brewing between Kenya and Uganda following the recent seizure of 5 Kenyan trucks carrying fish bound for the Democratic Republic of Congo. Uganda recently impounded tens of thousands of dollars worth of fish exports from Kenya. The Uganda authorities had insisted that the goods on the trucks were contraband and banned the transit of the exports to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The owners are seeking intervention from leaders of both countries, while their trucks loaded with fish have been parked at the Ugandan border for close to 3 weeks. Fish is one of Uganda's top foreign exchange earners. The government believes stamping out illegal trade in immature fish could help boost exports, but economic analysts argue that the current standoff with Kenyan traders could strain trade relations between the two countries.
They broke the seals. We were not there. We don't know where they got an order of breaking our seals. The goods were on transit. We don't sell fish in Uganda. Our goods are on transit to DRC Congo. We went to a commissioner, High Commissioner, and we were expecting the feedback to give us so that they release our trucks to DRC Congo.
Increased trade of immature fish to DRC Congo, with some of it first taken to Kenya, repacked and passed through Ugandan borders and put fish on transit. We are going to have abrupt inspectors at any time, beginning from today. We are going to make sure that we have people that we deploy at any time to check why the increasing illegal fishing is taking place.
Now we move on to other topics. Europe once again becomes the pandemic hotspot for COVID-19, with a big jump in the number of fatalities recorded compared to last week. According to the World Health Organization, the 27,000 new deaths recorded during the week in Europe mark a weekly jump of 10%, a figure that represents more than half of the COVID-related fatalities worldwide last week. In addition, they report that some countries where vaccination rates had reached a high level still experienced an increase of 10% or more in cases in the last week, with the highest numbers coming from Bulgaria, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Romania. They warn that vaccines cannot replace other prevention measures and call on these countries to take response measures according to their actual conditions. Thousands of demonstrators marched on the New Zealand Parliament to protest against COVID-19 restrictions, prompting a major police deployment at the Wellington building known as the Beehive. About 3,000 people made their way peacefully through the capital city centre, including dozens of motorcyclists performing burnouts and teachers who face losing their jobs if they refuse vaccination. Police confirmed there were no arrests, although they expressed disappointment over so many participants flouting coronavirus restrictions. Recent cited figures in the country showed almost 90% of the population had received their first vaccination dose. The government has adopted a tough COVID-19 response, including hard lockdowns and tight border restrictions, which has in New Zealand record only 31 virus fatalities in a population of 5 million. On Saturday, Venezuela achieved a cultural milestone as the nation attempted to set a new world record for the largest orchestra in the world. A total of 12,000 musicians gathered at the courtyard of the Military Academy of Fuerte Tiuna played for 12 minutes the Slavonic March by Tchaikovsky to achieve the world's largest orchestra title. They performed several universal pieces as the Hallelujah by Handel, the Te Deum, and others that represent Venezuela's composers and music, the national anthem, the merengue del primer dedo, el chamambo, el alma llanera, and Venezuela. The event was attended by Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez and other authorities. Auditors and independent observers assessed 40 quadrants of 280 musicians each and evaluated the performance. The reports will be sent to the Guinness Record headquarters, which will give its verdict within 10 days. If accomplished, this performance will break the current record held by Russia with 8,000 performers. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.